Welcome everyone to session 2 of the Angular Spring Camp 2026 edition. We're in the middle of our meetup journey with one event already behind us. If you are here for the first session, let us know in the comments. I'm Dawid Kostka and I will be your host for today's event. I'm broadcasting live from the Warsaw in Poland and I'm curious to see how global our Angular community is. So please share your city and country in the comments. We'll take a look at this in a moment. In the meantime, a big shout out to the entire Angular.love crew. Without the support of my team, I wouldn't be able to organize these events with them. So thank you all. Another big thank you also goes into our sponsor, House of Angular, for their continuous support on our community. House of Angular is not just a software agency specializing in all things Angular, but also the go-to experts for high-end Angular consulting and workshop. All right, let's see how big our Angular community really is. I see we have some people from Athens in Greece. Of course, we have Adrian from Wrocław in Poland. We have some folks from Serbia, from Italy, Netherlands, Cologne in Germany, a lot of folks here all over the world. It's really nice to see you all here. Okay, in case you like our events, please share them on the social media. By building these events together and learning new things, we become better developers. And as you know, the better the developers, the better the people that you work with. So please share these events on the social media. In today's agenda, we have 3 speakers. We'll start with Krzysztof Skorupka, who will be diving deep into the world of the Zoneless Angular, which is now easier to experience than ever in your applications. Next, we'll have Asfanis Prodamu, who will give us guide on the atomic state patterns in the Angular, so we can move away from the monolithic states to a new decentralized pattern. And finally, we'll have Jons, who will tell us the story how testing of the Angular code has evolved over all of these years. In my opinion, this is the fascinating story about how Vitess changed the game of the testing Angular code. Note, before each technical session, I will also have a quick chat with our speakers on how they use AI in their daily work. Listen actively, take the notes, as there will be plenty of expert knowledge shared. But that's also not all. After each talk, we'll have a live Q&A session, and this is your personal chance to get your questions answered by the Angular expert. Don't worry, you don't have to be shy. Keep those questions coming in the chat throughout the stream, as we'll review them at the end of each presentation. One last thing to keep on your radar, make sure to save the date for our final event, June 9th at 3 PM CST. Keep an eye on our Angular.love social media, as we'll soon announce the special guest for the grand final. And now, let's start the first presentation. Our guest is a man who usually hosts our events and makes sure everything is running smoothly behind the scenes. But don't let that fool you. He has some super Angular knowledge. Krzysztof Skorupka is the Angular architect and one of the core pillars behind the Angular.love community. He's also an expert who tracks all of the Angular changes and considers how they might impact the applications. All of that while solving complex architectural puzzles and mentoring other developers. Welcome on the stage, Krzysztof. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. And you?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited for this lineup. We've got multiple people around here and also very great speakers. So I'm wondering, what we will talk about today?
Yeah, so my topic is basically about Zoneless, primarily Zoneless in the change detection, because it expands beyond that. But yeah, basically it will be all Zoneless, focused mainly on change detection.
And I think it's an interesting presentation, especially that Zoneless is now becoming the default change detection strategy, but Zoneless is basically becoming the default right now. So this presentation, in my opinion, will be very interesting to give people the knowledge. Krzysztof, I have a question for you. Do you use AI?
Yeah, I do, as all of us, I believe, nowadays.
I knew it. And I've got a question for you. As you know, Angular moves really fast, especially in the recent years. So how do you get your AI coding agent to write a code that is consistent with the modern Angular code, especially, for example, the zoneless testing of the Angular code? How do you do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. And indeed, in the past few versions, Angular was moving pretty fast. Totally agree with that. But I have a feeling like it settled a little bit recently, which from the API surface and stability is quite a good thing. And it probably also helps the AI agents a little bit, if not everything is changing so fast. I believe most of that was driven by the signals, right? We were adopting them pretty much everywhere, every part of the framework, but now it stabilized a bit. And to the question itself, yeah, I believe the key thing here is to configure your AI engine in the proper way, whatever it is. If it is, I don't know, CloudMD or Copilot instructions or cursor rules, doesn't really matter. The more context you provide your AI agent, the better, right? Because of course it has some context from your existing code base, but still some explicit rules are really needed in there. So you can write these kind of rules yourself in the file. And also what is worth mentioning, I believe, like being zoneless compatible is easier than you think. Maybe it's not that hard really to get your app compatible with zoneless. Hopefully we'll see that in the presentation in a second. But still, what really helps to keep our AI agents in sync with all of the new stuff in Angular is, as I said, the basic rules in the files, then also providing some either custom skills and or Angular developer skill is definitely helpful for that because it contains a lot of best practices for the modern Angular. So that's definitely a great help. You can also consider Angular MCP. It also gives some best practices and allows to agents to search the documentation and to get the newest stuff in there. But besides that, I believe it's also important to set up your linting rules in really like strong way and strict, right? So you do not really allow anything which is not desired for your application, like any zone, not APIs which are not compatible with Zoneless. So you can catch all of these cases there and provide the immediate feedback to your AI agent, and even explicitly listing the APIs that it shouldn't use. That's also another thing, or even a golden file to follow where you yourself create it and show it that's how it is supposed to look. So I would say there is many ways, and you just need to collect and pick whatever works best for your AI agent and for your code base, because every code base is also different.
Yes, I agree with everything you said, especially the fact that Zoneless isn't that hard that it may look like it is. Often just having on push, like in previous zone strategy, is just fine for it to work in the Zoneless environment. The only tricky part is the unit tests, but as you mentioned, you can just have some skills and get around that in that way. Okay, Chris, I know you've been playing around with the Zoneless, so I'm wondering if after all of your experiments, do you think an AI agent is ready to migrate an entire small medium scale application to the Zoneless from the zone strategy?
I should probably say yes, because I guess no AI agent will tell you I'm not capable of doing that, right? But
right.
Seriously, it depends on 2 or 3 things, I would say. So it's the first one would be where you are currently. So what's the state of your code base right now? then the other one, where are you heading? Because there are basically multiple paths to go zoneless, as we just mentioned, right? So that's the other thing. And the last thing would be, how much do you trust the AI? Probably you shouldn't too much. And how good tools you have to really assess what AI produces for you. So all these three factors, I believe, play a significant role in here, because if your application is right now pretty small, as you said, medium or small, you use signals pretty much everywhere. I believe you are really close to just get to zoneless. Maybe your app is already zoneless compatible, right? And really not much changes are needed. But then if you have a complex application which is not really using the signals so much, and it's 5 years old, RxJS everywhere, complex streams and so on, then and you would like to get straight to the zoneless with signals, then it could be a challenge, right? Because even just migrating these very complex flows to signals it's a challenge on its own, I would say. So that's another thing. And then I would also say that if you take these two, then you can assess what would you like to do, and also what do we really mean by migrating the code to zoneless? If it is it autonomously migrating in one step, or is it more step by step and still human in the loop? So that's also a different story. And to be honest, I would advise this approach to really go step by step, because we can do that. Angular affords us to do that, so I will benefit from that. And even there is some official Angular tooling which can assist you with this step-by-step migration. So I would really recommend checking that. We'll also mention that briefly in the talk itself. And then when it comes to assessing the results, probably both the application and the tests need to be updated. So your AI agent can pretend, okay, tests were updated, app was updated, everything is zoneless ready, and you are good to go. But it could just, make the tests green without really making them work properly. So there are a lot of catches, I would say, in here. So you have to be careful. And given all of these three, let's say, factors, I would still advise to really go AI assistant by step.
Yes, I agree with you. And I see that we got one note in the chat that we should be careful about third-party component libraries that are using Zone. And this is the one factor that you mentioned. It's often easy to migrate for small or medium apps, but it may become difficult as our app is bigger, has more functionalities, more libraries, and we may get caught on the point where something stops work and we have a regression, which of course we want to avoid. Okay, Chris, you gave us two very deep knowledge and answers to the questions. I believe you can start your presentation. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Just give me a sec to find the right window. Okay, I believe here it is. So first, even though David already gave me a great introduction, let me just add a few words from my side. My name is Krzysztof Skorupka. I'm based in Warsaw, Poland. I'm an Angular team lead at House of Angular. And of course, I'm a community member of our great Angular.love team. All right, so zoneless, right? So what is really zoneless? We can say that it's just running without zones. And that's the narrative I see in a lot of places. But I believe this is not enough for us, at least for today. And also, I observed that there is plenty of content on how to really get there. But I believe that it is also the why is also worth a moment. Why do we even have Zoneless in the first place? And why are we leaving them behind? Why do you want to do that? And I would like to stop for a moment in here. So we could have called, this new word like signal driven, or maybe notify based, or maybe on demand. But we didn't. We called it zoneless. So zones are so deep in Angular that even the thing replacing them is still defined by their absence, right? It's still named after that. That's an irony, isn't it? But this just shows how important zones were and how significant this transition, this shift really is. So let's understand it from the ground up. And to do that, we need to start with some fundamentals. We'll try to get through this really quickly, but not to really lose anyone on the way. So we have a common ground, because many of the concepts that we'll see in a moment will be also important in our future discussion about zones. So change detection definition, just for the sake of it, is just keeping UI with sync with the state. So let's get through that. And now we can talk about change detection ingredients. So when talking about the change detection, I find it useful to build a simple mental model around it. So over the years, I saw many developers confusing these two separate aspects. So I think it's worth to clarify them and to separate them from the start. So the first one is like just finding the right moment to run the change detection. Not to run it too frequently, not to run it too little, that our application is not really, our UI is not really updated when it should. And the other part is the efficiently executing change detection. So which components to check in which order, how all of this happens. So now let's get to the how part. So it's a simple tree traversal. So this starts from the root component always. It's top-down, depth first, and it visits every node pretty much. It checks bindings, runs lifecycle hooks. We'll not get too much into what's really happening on a node level, because this is not really the scope of this presentation, but we'll focus more on really which nodes are checked and so on. So to show it, and this is pretty much the default strategy, right? That every component in the tree is always visited on every change detection run. So to illustrate that, it starts from the root, as I said. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, the whole alphabet. But to be serious, as you can see, the whole tree is always checked. That's the default strategy. All right, then we have on push strategy. And this is also important for the zoneless, but we'll get to that later. So it follows the same basic rules, but it also introduces the concept of being dirty. And so on push components are only checked in the situation when they are dirty. And if they are not, the whole tree that they're out the root is cut off or skipped. And of course, if default components are reached on the way, they are all still always checked. So the rule for the default ones still apply. So let's have a quick look on this dirty marking and on push. So let's say we have a click on the F component. So it gets marked dirty, then also its parent is marked dirty, so it's its parent. So up to the root, all of the ancestors are marked dirty. And after that, if the change detection starts, it checks A node, it reaches B node, but since this is on push but not dirty, it is and completely skipped from this change detection run. So then it goes further to E, it's change detected, then F, it's change detected because it's on push and 30, and then G because it's a default component, so it's always change detected, basically. So that's pretty much it for the on push strategy. But now you might be wondering what really makes component dirty. And this specific slide is something which Zoneless builds on. So one thing is the input value change. Of course, it has to be immutable because we cannot really change the object inside, change some properties of it without changing the reference because it will not really be detected. Then all of the events that are bound to our template, and this includes our DOM events, outputs, host listeners, all of that. Of course, our old friend async pipe, this also marks component as dirty. We can call mark for check method from the change detector ourselves. So this way we explicitly mark a component as dirty. And also if the fare block has its state changed, this marks the component dirty as well. All right, so that's the set. And also to demystify just a bit for those of you which are not really that familiar with change detector ref, you can think of it as a handle that Angular gives you to manually control change detection for a specific node, for a specific component view. So there is this mark for check method. We already discussed that. It just marks the component and all of the parents as dirty. There is detach and reattach method. This is pretty interesting, but not really so important for our presentation. This allows you to completely disconnect some subtree from the change detection, and it will not be seen by any change detection run, let's say, at all. So it will be kept aside. So you can detach it and later reattach it. And also we have detect changes method. This is really different from the mark for check, and I always seen like people confusing these two, because mark for check, as we discussed, it just marks dirty up to the root, and detect changes, it doesn't really do dirty checking, it just runs change detection synchronously locally, starting from the node when it was called. So this is working with the component and its children, not really the parents. So you are basically just executing change detection in place with this one. All right, so that's basically the how part of the change detection. Now let's get how this part could be improved. And of course, the answer is signals. So from the reactive graph perspective, signals are reactive consumers, right? So you can think of a view of a component that consumes some signals inside, that this is a kind of like an effect, right? Wrapping the values, and it can react if anything inside changes. So when a signal read in the template and it gets a new value, then the consumer is marked dirty. And this is a very important distinction. It's not the component. It's not the component node which is marked dirty. It is the reactive consumer which is attached to this node. That's very important, and you will see in a minute why. So with that, we can implement so-called semi-local change detection. So before Angular 17, when a signal was changed in a template, mark for checked was called. So the whole ancestor parse was marked dirty. So basically what we observed is the same behavior that we observe, for example, with an async part, right? Because as we just discussed, then the whole path up to the root will be marked dirty, and we can run change detection from the top and narrow our checked components just to this single path. But from the version 17, there is a new function introduced, which is called mark ancestors for traversal. And this is a totally different thing. So with that, only this reactive consumer, again, it's not the node, marked dirty, and all of its access stores are not really marked dirty or anything. They've got a new special flag, which is pretty long and is called has child views to refresh. But basically it indicates, hey, there is some component or view down below that might need to be refreshed, but it's not me. And as the result, if we run this type of change detection, we can narrow down our change detection execution only to this specific component. So it's no longer the path, like in the standard on push and mark for and dirty marking scenario, but it is just the single component. And let's see it in action. So as you can see, in this case, we have some header in the F node. It gets a new value for this signal. We highlighted it in green to show that. So its consumer is marked dirty. Then the process starts and the has child views to refresh. The flags are propagated up to the root. So this is really similar to dirty marking, but as you can see, different flags or different bits are set to these components. And then at some point, if change detection is scheduled, it will check a node, but a node is on push and it is not dirty, right? So according to the rules which we've discussed a couple of minutes ago, they still apply, right? It is on push, it is not dirty. We don't really change detect it, but it has child views to refresh. So we know that we need to still traverse the tree to search for the nodes that really need to get the view change detected. So in this case, B will be skipped because, again, this is just on push component, which is not dirty. So it is skipped completely. So it gets to E. And for E, this is the same story as for A. This is on push, not dirty, but has child views to refresh. And finally, we reach F. Its consumer is dirty and it is on push. So it means we need to run change detection for this one. So as you can see, we are executing change detection only for F. So we went from the default strategy where all of the components were checked through the push strategy with dirty marking, where just the path to the root was change detected, just to this semi-local change detection where only a single component can be change detected. So that was already a pretty nice improvement. There is one caveat, though, that we should talk about, I feel. So let's consider this example. We have F node with a click handler, right, that sets the title, our signal, to the new value, right? That's basically it. Looks very similar to what we've just discussed. But if we run it, so there is a click, as you see, title set is called. And if you will run such example and debug it, you will see that the F got dirty flag. So did E, and so did A, and twice so, right? We expected to get the consumer mark dirty, and also these parents to get has child views to refresh flags. And in fact, they got all of these flags, but they also got the dirty flag. And this is because the old rules still apply. And as you remember, one of the things that really marks component and all of its ancestors dirty is the template-bound events. And this is exactly this case, right? We have a click event. So even though signal triggers this, let's say, new semi-local marking, still our old rules, so template-bound events, also run its own marking with dirty. So when change detection runs at some point, the whole path will be change detected. So the outcome is that signal change trigger really matters. So if it comes from something that also marks the component dirty, there is not much benefit from targeted change detection. The whole path will be change detected. So if we would like to benefit from the targeted change detection, we need to really employ the APIs that are not marking dirty our components. You have some examples in here. We can also attach some listeners to the template elements with them, but still the default template binding will work in a dirty marking manner. And that's because of the backwards compatibility. If it was changed, then it will be a breaking change for Angular. Maybe there will be at some point, maybe there will be this special flag for the components like signal true or whatever, that you explicitly opt out of this behavior. But for now, to be backwards compatible, we need to live with that. All right. So now let's get to the when part. And this is Zone.js. So, we can sum this up with just one little word, magic, and that's it. Because in fact, it is a little bit of magic, and it feels a little bit of magic. And that's not bad, I would say. I believe that Angular get its popularity. One of the factors that played a big role in its popularity is because this change detection was just working, right? Was just scheduling for the developers. They didn't really have to think about what triggers it and so on. It just worked. But it comes obviously with a cost. So let's dive into the Zone.js and its concepts. So how all of this fits together? Let's try to at least a bit demystify this magic. So there is three parts. There is Zone.js library, which really gets the async APIs and monkey patches them. We will get to that in a moment. There is ng-zone. This is the Angular zone context, so it's already, let's say, aware of Zone.js. And then there is a scheduler, which is, on the other hand, aware of the ng-zone. So Zone.js, as I said, it just wraps some operations. So it really lets you intercept when some async operation starts and complete, right? So with that, it patches almost all of the async APIs at load time. And it just intercepts, it knows when the operation starts and when it ends. And here, ng-zone comes. So it maintains its own zone. And this is really, how to say that this is really dedicated to Angular. We know that if something is running in Angular, it is running in Angular zone, right? So we know that this is the framework code. So this really hooks into some Zone.js callbacks to detect when really this async work completes. Because as we just said, Zone.js knows when this async work completes. So if it sees that there is no more tasks pending in the queue, basically, and that Zone.js tells it, okay, there is nothing else waiting in there, then it emits on microtask empty event. And that's for the microtasks. And there is another event which is called onStable, but for this one to emit, both micro and macro tasks need to be empty. And this is not really that important for us today because we are talking mainly about change detection, but it is also really important for the SSR or tests. Okay, and the last part is the zone-based scheduler. So this is pretty easy, let's say, at the very end. So we know that nothing else is, let's say, pending, running, that it's safe to run another change detection execution. So when the on-microtask MP emits, it simply calls upref tick, and this is what our, if you remember the arrow we had on our application root, which triggered change detection, that's basically it. It's application ref tick, which is called by the scheduler. So of course, this is simplified code, but it looks more or less like that. So if it empties, we got the change detection scheduled. All right, so that was Zone.js. Hopefully, at least some of this makes sense to you and explains a bit how all of this works. So the main takeaways are like Zone is really triggering the change detection if it sees that there is no more pending microtasks in the queue. But it is still speculative, so it doesn't really know if really anything changed in Angular. Maybe just some tasks were executing, but no like UI visible state was changed. So it just runs it just in case, let's say. And here comes the Zoneless. So this is the improving the when part. So how this one works. First of all, let's think, why do we really want to go zoneless? So as we said, this Zone.js library, it runs before actually our application starts. It needs to patch all of these async APIs in order to intercept them, right? And this comes with a cost in our initial bundle size. So as you can see, this is for the Angular 21 empty application, zone present or zone is removed. It's like 12 kilobytes compressed. So pretty big dependency, especially for the initial bundle size. The other factor in here is that the bootstrap without the Zone.js is just faster, because patching all of these APIs, it also takes time, and Angular has to wait for that, right? So before we run Angular, we need to fetch the dependency, patch all of the APIs, and then Zone.js is ready for the Angular. So all of this change detection mechanics works. Another thing, this is kind of niche, but still there were some APIs that were not really easy to patch, like IndexedDB callbacks, some web workers APIs. But most important thing is also native async await, because this couldn't really be patched by Zone.js. So there are some other ways, let's say, that we need to treat them to really backport this. So Zone is still aware of this. So this is definitely not ideal. And the other reason is that our stack traces are polluted. I believe all of you, when we see some errors in our application code, we've seen this type of things. When this is very simple example, right? This is like really just click handler throwing an error, right? But still, you already see the difference. But if there is something multi-level, which comes from various asynchronous tasks, these Zone.js callbacks can be really huge. Of course, it was improved partially by the Chrome team and Angular team some time ago to really not expose this, to allow to not expose these Zone.js bits, but it's still not ideal. It's just better to get rid of this. So it's just easier to debug our application, not really iterate through all of these zone callbacks, and also to quickly spot check any errors and see where they are coming from, not really getting through all of these Zone.js frames. And last but definitely not least, is to eliminate these unnecessary cycles. As I just said in the previous slides, it runs just in case, right? Because the queue empties, so it thinks, okay, some work was done. Maybe it's time to run the change detection, but it didn't really know if it was required or not. So that is our main, let's say, runtime performance gain. So here comes the Zoneless scheduler. So this is a new scheduler added in Angular 17.1, and this is independent from Zone.js. So you might be wondering how it works. There is a special notify method, and this method really gives some hints that some state indeed changed, right? And this is invoked by both mark ancestors for traversal, so the function that we already know for this semi-local signal change detection, if some signal is changed in the template, if some effects are run in the view context, and things like that. But the main thing would be signal change in the template. And another important category is the when our view is marked dirty. So async pipe, template events, and so on. Pretty much all of the things that we already discussed for the on-push strategy, which are marking the component dirty. This is very important. This is another group, let's say. And there are also some other notifications, but they are not really contributing that much to the change detection itself. They are more focused on executing render hooks. So we'll skip that for now. You can also be wondering if this Zoneless scheduler is not scheduling too many change detection runs, right? Because, as I said, when the state changes, then it calls this notify method, which in turn will schedule change detection. But that's not the case. They are collected together. Maybe we will not get into too much details in here, but you don't need to worry about that. So they are collected over some time window, and the change detection is scheduled once per this time window, let's say. And this is designed primarily for on-push applications. And that's because what I've just mentioned previously, because one of the triggers for this notify method is the dirty marking. And of course, the signal story, the semi-local, we also already explained that it requires on-push change detection to be set on components. All right, and this is basically some very simplified code on how this change detection is triggered in this case. So as you can see, there is schedule callback with rough phrase. I will not get into too much details in here, but this is responsible for really coalescing these multiple notifications. Okay, so let's see how this behaves. Let's look at our diagram. So let's assume that we got a new signal update. It comes from somewhere, let's say, not really to attach it to any example with click handler or whatever. Let's assume that we just got an update for our signal. And when it is getting new value, it calls notify method, as we just said. And this sets some special flags on the scheduler itself, and our normal process of marking consumer dirty and parents with has child views to refresh flags also is in place. So then after this time window passes, we get upref tick from the scheduler, and it hits the root of the application. And again, A is on push component, but it's not dirty. It is skip. The same for B, the same for E, and we finally reach F, which gets checked. So as you can see, this is the same concept that we had in the semi-local change detection, but this time it also notifies the scheduler that the change detection should be run now. All right, there is also hybrid scheduler, and in fact, this runs both Zone.js based and this notify-based, let's say, scheduling. They are cooperating with each other. So the benefit you get there is that this notify handles the cases where Zone.js will miss otherwise. So if there is a change for a signal which is outside the Angular zone, even if you are not running Zoneless, you will get your change detection scheduled with signals. So it just keeps you safe to adopt signals, even if you change their values outside of the zone, while you are still running the zone-based change detection. The funny thing is that, in fact, there is just one scheduler plus Zone.js adapter in there, and they cooperate together. And in some zoneless mode, it's just that the adapter is gone and the scheduler runs solo. But these are more like technical details. We do not need to get into them right now, but it's worth to know. All right, so how do we get there? The first prerequisite is on push. I don't really like saying that, but if you ask if it is really required to have on push, it is not. But this is strongly recommended. And why so? It's because this is really your safety net. If your application already works with on push, it will work with zoneless approach. So still, it could be that maybe you never switched on pushed flag on your components, but they are in fact zoneless compatible, right? Because you are not doing some weird stuff. So you can risk and switch this on for your application, but there is no guarantee at this point. So this is a very important distinction, and that's why I would still recommend to first make sure that you are on push compatible and only then go to zoneless. So what is important? Not full signals adoption is needed as a precondition, right? This is the direction, of course, because as you said, with that we can get this semi-local or targeted change detection, but it's not really required. You can just get your regular on-push compatible application when you do not use signals at all even, and it will work with zoneless. You will just get the whole path change detection that instead of the single nodes. And yeah, this is also quite important point. You might be wondering if the conditions are the same for pretty much on-push compatibility and zoneless compatibility, so why not to switch directly to zoneless and basically be there? The difference is that you can switch on push component by component or component tree by component tree. You can migrate your application gradually, slowly, and work on that. But zoneless is just like a single switch. If you switch it on, it works already for the whole application. So if something is broken, even in one component, it will get broken. But on push, you can do one by one, and once all of your components are on push, then it's safe to switch to zoneless. Another important thing is on push will be the default strategy starting from Angular 22, and that's great. I believe it should have happened time ago. But anyway, it is a good news. So you see that clearly the direction is into that. And there is also a quite interesting tool from Angular in its MCP. It's called on-push zoneless migration. So this really guides you with a step-by-step, in a step-by-step manner, what you should do in order to make your application on-push or zoneless compatible. It is not really changing any code, but instead it could give your AI agent the hints. You can just point the whole directory or just single component and push it to this tool, and it will tell you, you should check this, that, and that. So this basically gives the instructions for your AI agent what really needs to be done in order to migrate a specific component or directory. And it is step by step. After it finishes this step, then ask again, and so on and so forth. So it is intended to work, as I said, step by step, or even in the loop. All right. And to really enable Zoneless itself, between versions 17 and 19, it's provide experimental Zoneless change detection, because it was experimental back then. From version 20, it's provide Zoneless change detection, no more experimental in the name. And from version 21, it's default. So really no extra provider is needed. You just need to ensure that there is no provide zone change detection, which will really bring you back to the zone-based world. And another thing is to remove the dependency from the Zone.js dependency from the polyfills, from all of the targets that basically reference it. Before Angular 21, it also Angular warned you with a runtime warning that there is still some Zone.js dependency loaded, even though you are claiming you would like to run zoneless Angular. So that's also nice. And at the very end, you can also remove Zone.js package from your depths. All right, so what about the zone-related APIs, which are harmless? This is the ng-zone run outside Angular. So they basically do nothing if you are running zoneless Angular. It's no difference if you use them or not in your application, but it is worth keeping them in case you are you are developing a library that is used in maybe by both zone-based and zoneless applications, right? Because still zone-based applications can benefit from the performance gains, which, for example, outside Angular and then ng-zone run gives you. There are also some that will never really fire without zones. And this is the on microtask empty, on unstable, and unstable. So pretty important, let's say, APIs. We already discussed them on previous slides. So we need to have some replacements for them. And this is the after next render, after every render. I don't think these APIs are so widely used, let's say, at least directly from the ng-zone, but still there are cases you can find them. So those need to be replaced in order for the app to work correctly. There is also ng-zone is stable. This is really niche. It's always true in zoneless, so you should avoid it and not really use it in any way. But the cases, as I said, are really limited. And for the SSR, it also was relying, as we already discussed, on the stability of the app before it was flashed to the client. Now we have these pending tasks, which is a special service, let's say, that allows you to indicate, hey, I'm starting some task. You need to wait for it before the app stabilizes. And there is also one nice addition, which is provide check not changes config. And you can add this to your providers and specify an interval. And this will periodically change the application if there are maybe some changes coming to your state that will be not catched by zoneless, but still they would, let's say, cause an update of the UI in Zone.js scenario, let's say. So let's say you have a set timeout without, and you just check a regular component property in there to some other value, and it is read in the template, but this is not signal, and you didn't use mark for check or anything like that. This will be cast by that, and you will be warned that, hey, there is something going on, and it could be missed by Angular. All right, so what's the real payoff then of going zoneless? First is performance gains, as we discussed. When there is no Zone.js, our bundle is much lighter. There is no extra ticks, no extra change detection runs, no speculative running, and also no patching surprises. If you add on push to that, you also get change detection checks only on the specific paths of our component tree. If you add signals on top of that, you will get all of that, plus this is targeted, the change detection is targeted only to these specific components. So getting back to our mental model, which I mentioned, right? There was when and there was how, right? So first was regarding the change detection scheduling. So what triggers it? And there was how. So how it is executed, which nodes are changed. So with Zoneless, it is also really simplified. From now on, I would say you can just have one mental model that works for both, right? Because what really needs checking is what triggers it. So if you have a signal update in the template, it both indicates, okay, this component is kind of dirty, it's consumer dirty, so it needs a refreshment. And at the same time, it is telling the change detection, hey, I need change detection to be scheduled and need to be updated. So this really simplifies this mental model once again. So I believe also the developer experience is much easier, and it's much easier to debug the applications and really find where some weirdness comes from. Okay, so what is then Zoneless after all, getting back to our initial question? It makes change detection explicit, it makes change detection targeted with signals, and it just makes it predictable. So pretty much state tells Angular exactly what to update and when. And that's it, what I had for today. Thank you very much.
Wow, that was a very deep, insightful presentation of Chris. Thank you for sharing all of this knowledge. Now we'll move on into the Q&A session. And let's go back into our AI warm-up. And we got a question if we'll show like the skill MD files with all of the best practices that we discussed. What do you think?
That's a nice request, but I'm just wondering which practices do we really refer to here? Because, you know, we can, if we would like to write the best practices for everything, we would end up with like a ton of skills, I guess. Or, but maybe this was meant just to really be focused on Zoneless, I guess. So we can definitely consider that, publishing something like this. Because, yes, yeah, also, as I said in the intro, right, when we had this, let's say, warm-up discussion, that there are already skills from Angular, there are MCP from Angular, so we probably do not need to duplicate that, right? But we can think, there are also some bits in the skills from the official skills from the Angular team that are really referring to Zoneless, but to be honest, there is not that much of it. I wish there is more. So yeah. So maybe that's the gap we can fill.
Yes. Okay. We have also another question, and this one is asking about third-party libraries and if we should be careful while migrating to Zoneless and having such library that uses the Zone.js. What's your opinion?
Yes, definitely yes. But first thing is that I believe the landscape of these third-party libraries is much better now because, you know, already some time passed since we got the first, let's say, experimental version of the Zoneless. There was a lot of rumors about Zoneless for already quite a long time. So there was time for the library authors to really prepare. And I believe most of the main like big libraries are already Zoneless compatible, including Angular Material and CDK, I believe. They are both Zoneless compatible. So that's one thing. And for those that maybe not, that they are still using the zone-based APIs, it's still there is still a question: what kind of APIs do they use, right? Because as we just discussed, some of the APIs are just harmful, just can stay there. They were there just to improve the performance in the zone-based world, but they do not harm in the zoneless world. So we can keep them. I mean, even if they are kept in the libraries, we can safely still use the libraries ourselves, even if we are not having Zone.js as our dependency. But on the other hand, there are also the other APIs that, for example, if the library relies on stable call, then there is a problem, right? So there is no easy answer for that. I would say the easier path would be really to update the library, to propose a pull request, or at least raise an issue. But there are also some more hacky ways that you can try to provide your own ng zone in your application, and try to mimic these APIs. But this is I would say, the bumpy road, and I would not go into that direction unless really necessary.
Okay. I also see we have a few other questions, and let's go with a statement from Right for Hill. And he's saying that there is no way to migrate to Zoneless for legacy code base. What do you think? I think there's always a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I mean, it depends. Also, this relates to what we've discussed before the presentation, right? It depends where you are, basically, right? But still, it maybe if you are, I don't know, at some Angular 4 version or whatever, that would be hard, right? And you have a complex app. But in any other case, I think you can gradually migrate, make your code base modernized and so on. And just at some point, you will reach that, let's say, milestone when you can consider migrating to Zoneless. And anyway, as I said, I don't know the code base and the constraints this person has on mind, but still it's worth giving it a try, and maybe even trying the official tools from Angular. That would be a nice experiment, to be honest, to really try, for example, this zoneless migration tool from the Angular MCP on a really old code base. What would it really say?
Yeah, that would be definitely an interesting experiment to see how hard it would be to migrate like Angular v9 application to Zoneless. It's definitely a lot of effort. Okay, Chris, I see we have a lot of questions, but we're running out of time for the time slot. So can you answer these questions asynchronously in the chat?
Yeah, sure. I will try.
Okay, so we'll wrap up this session and we'll go into next pre-lecture. See ya, Chris.
Thank you. See you.
Now, if you want to take your skills to the next level, I have some exciting news from the House of Angular team. Mateusz Stefańczyk and Fanis Pradamu are running a series of open online workshops that you definitely need to check out. Yesterday, a workshop on the scalable architecture took place, which was led by Fanis Pradamu, who, by the way, you will see on the stage in just a few minutes. Our next workshop will take place on the June 12th, and its theme will be Modern Angular with AI by Mateusz Stefańczyk. It's a total game changer for anyone looking to integrate AI tools directly into their daily Angular development workflow. Currently, we're displaying the QR code on this screen site, so go ahead and scan it. Check out the full curriculum of the workshop. I promise you, there's a lot of great content in there. We've also prepared something extra for our live stream audience. Use the promo code SPRING26 to get an additional 10% off on the Modern Angular workshop. If you go ahead there now, you can still grab the early bird pricing for the June session. And combined with our code, it's an absolute steal. This is your last chance to get this deal with up to 40% off on the workshop itself. Scan the code, check out the curriculum, and secure your spot. And just a side note, if you're looking for a workshop that is more tailored to your company's specific needs, the experts also host private sessions. So reach out on the website and they will definitely help you put a plan together that fits best for your team. Okay, now it's time for our next guest, and it's of course Fanis Prelemu. Fanis is someone who honestly needs no introduction to this community, as he has been the core part of the Angular.love for years so far. And you've likely seen his sharing deep technical knowledge across various platforms. Fanis is a blogger, he's a trainer, and he also runs his own YouTube channel, Code Shots with Profanis. I no wonder that he holds the title of the Google Developer Expert in Angular, as he's really good. Welcome on the stage, Fanis.
Hello, hello. Thank you very much for the very warm welcome, David. How are you?
I am really cool. I am excited for your presentation, especially that right now is an interesting time in the Angular, where things start to shift from like global stores to local stores. And this is the topic of your presentations, right?
Exactly. Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
And I look
By the
forward
way, I heard.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Go ahead.
Please, after you.
Okay. So I heard from Natalia that you conducted the workshop yesterday. Can you tell us how did it went? How were like people reactions? How many questions there were?
Well, it went really well, and it was a very good, very good team of people, and they were very, how can I say, warm on in terms of joining the actual workshop. You know, sometimes when you deliver a topic, the very boring part is to be like, I'm delivering, this is my topic, I'm done, bye-bye, without having any questions. This is the boring part. And that's why what we are trying to do is, of course, to try to engage people, try to engage the attendees, to deliver as much questions as they have, to ask as much questions as they have. And yes, they did that, and it was amazing. And yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I hope the attendees enjoyed it as well.
That's nice to hear that people are actually interactive, because sometimes we are like scared to say something, the atmosphere is not right, but from what you're saying, everything is going great.
The atmosphere part that you said, you're right. The atmosphere part is, this is from our side. We have to open the door for questions. This is your time, open your questions. I'm here and to ask anything. And I'm really glad that people don't afraid to ask questions. Sometimes, you know, we are afraid to ask questions because, is it the right one? You know, we have to bypass this fear of asking questions.
Yes. Speaking of questions, I've got 2 questions for you, and I hope they won't be hard and you will be answer to them.
Okay.
So first, I'm pretty sure you are using AI like everyone else in these times. So how are you personally using AI to design the state management in your application and also to implement it in a quick way?
Oh, that's a very good question. Well, regarding the state management, and whenever I have to architect things, I'm using the old-fashioned way, let's say. I'm using the pen and paper exercise. So first, I'm doing my exercise, pen and paper. I have everything in front of me. Then I have everything clear in my mind, and I start coding, of course, with the help of autocomplete nowadays, of course. I really like that. And then my coding style goes like that at first, I'm following actually 3 different steps of coding. First I'm writing, then I'm doing better, and then I'm doing it even better, something like that. This is the steps that I'm following. And what I'm doing is that after I'm finishing my coding, either the first part or the second part, then I'm feeding the whole thing into the AI, and I'm using that something like a rubber duck, asking questions. Do I have any race conditions? It's very good on spotting edge cases that we might miss. So this is how I use mainly AI. And of course, I'm not sure if Eunice is around. Eunice, if you're around, I hope that you don't say anything. Let's keep that secret. I'm using that for unit tests as well. Sorry, Eunice. But of course, we will learn for unit test after Oh, he's here. Shoot. No, I'm not using that for unit tests. I'm just using that for analyzing things.
Yeah, that's a nice one, and yeah, a lot of feedback around this topic. Okay, I
Yeah,
also have another
Eunice is
thing.
my friend. That's why I'm doing that. Yeah, I know that's a good thing to do, Eunice. Thank you, my friend. Sorry, David.
Yes. And I also wondered, as we have like right now the two state management patterns. We have first the local services and also libraries like Signal Store for the local state management.
Mhm.
And on the other side, we have like NGRX Store, NGRX FX, which allow us to store state globally. Have you like seen anything related to AI that may work better with one solution than the other?
Good question as well. Honestly, personally, I prefer having custom solutions like the atomic state controllers that we will see in a while. However, regarding Signal Store or NGRX Store, local state or global state, I have something I dare to say something very solid of how this is used. And this is it. I think that it's much better with local state and not with global state. And the reason is that when you have a bit of, let's say, more narrowed focus and less context, the code will be amazing. But when you have to rely on AI to conceptualize different features of how they will connect together and use your global state, I think this won't be that great compared to the local state.
Yes, I completely also agree. These are like also my feelings, especially that global state patterns sometimes have this boilerplate around the action, the effects, the reducers, and this can make the code itself complex, especially in case like this state affects multiple things. So likely AI should analyze all of that before making an impact into the code base and causing any regression.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Vanias, are you ready to start?
Yep, I'm ready. I'm ready to start.
Okay, then go ahead.
All right. So hello everybody again. So this is my card. Let me introduce myself. We already had an introduction, a great introduction from David, but let me do that since it's the way that I'm starting always. My name is Fanis Prodromou. I'm a Google developer expert in Angular, author of the book Mastering Angular Reactive Forms. I'm an educator and technical content creator, senior Angular developer at the company ASI, and co-organizer of the Angular Athens Meetup. Now, today's topic is about atomic state strategies for complex Angular UIs. Perhaps you might already have something in mind in terms of complex Angular UI, all right, and you know what state strategies are. But how about the atomic part? What are the atomic state strategies? And this is what I plan to do today. I plan to explain to you a very nice pattern. But at first, I have a rhetorical question, and this is the one. Where does state live? Let's assume that we have this very nice page, where what we have is no more like the URL, then we have the logo, and we have the menu with products, stores, and favorites, and this kind of very small counter, a badge counter with a number 6, and then we have a list of product cards. So let's now try to see where state live. So we have this very small one, which is just the counter 6. And this one is considered to be global state. I know that someone might be like, no, this is definitely not a global state. This is something, a very small one. We shouldn't consider that global. However, conceptually, it is global state. Why? Because we need to have that horizontally into our application. Think the following. Think that we have one of the verticals could be products, stores, and favorites. And no matter in which page we are, either products or stores or favorites, this badge, this counter should always be there, visible to the user. That's why this is considered to be a global state. Then we have this the component state, which is part of the product card, and it is no more like a set of variables that determine what the UI looks like and how it behaves at that specific moment. And then, of course, we have the URL, which is the highest level of state. And the URL dictates that we are on the products page or on the stores page or on the favorites page. And perhaps we can provide there more query parameters based on the number of pages, filters, and stuff like that. So where does state live? We talked about the global state, which is the horizontal state of the application, the component, which is the information of that particular component, and then we have the URL state, which is the highest level of state. Nice. But you know what? And perhaps there are many other categories, but I don't want to dive deep into this one. But what I would like here to highlight is the following. Whenever we are talking about and we are reading perhaps a book about a technical part and the theory, things seems a bit easy, right? You understand that, you know how it is and how it works, but then you have to move the theory part into the real code. And this is where things got a bit more complex. And that's why I have prepared this small application where I have the name Green Heaven. And this is the application that I'm using also for my workshop. And honestly, don't ask me why I decided to have it like Green Heaven, but anyways, this is it. So what this is, so we have the logo, we have the menu where we have the home, catalog, then we have the favorites heart, icon, the basket, and on the left side, we have some filters, and on the right side, we have some results, okay? And we will try now to work with this page. But at first, let's go into the left side, where we have some filters, and see the following. We have 3 different filter categories. One of them are the lighting requirements, where we have 3 checkbox items. Then we have one more, the plant properties, which is a drop-down, and then we have plant type, okay, which is just no more like a radio button. So we have 3 different filter types. What I would like now to do is the following. We would like to establish a communication between the left side, which is the filters part, and on the right side, where we have the results. How can we do that? Well, one option is just to have an output event from the filters component, and then to have an event handler on the results component. And the output handler will eventually grab just the selected filters and do something. If we see the sequence diagram, perhaps this is what it would look like. The actors here are the following: filters, results, and HTTP. So if we follow the approach that we have just described, what we're saying is that the filters will emit the filters, the selected filters, into the results, and the results eventually will invoke the HTTP call. We'll make the HTTP call so that we can have back our results. Nice. This works. This works just nice. However, there are a set of disadvantages. User is lacking the refresh page functionality. If we refresh the page, we will start from the beginning. And someone might be like, and why do we even have to refresh the page? This is a single page application. We don't have to refresh the page. Yes, we know that because we are developers, but the users don't know that. And the users really like to refresh the page. On the other hand, we are missing also the deep linking where the users are unable to share or bookmark a page. We have broken back button. At the time that we are selecting any filter, changing a pagination, it's very nice to also utilize the back button, which is an amazing browser functionality. And also, we are increasing, or to say it better, we have a tight coupling between results and the filters component. So since we have this kind of disadvantages, let's try now to make this flow a bit better, okay? So the actors now are the following. We have filters, we have results, we have URL, and we have the HTTP. And the filters will do the same thing. We'll emit the selected filters. We're doing that into the results, and then the results, we grab those filters, prepare the URL parameters, navigate with those parameters, and then what we have to do is just to read the parameters. We are reading the params, and we are making the actual HTTP call. I know that someone will be like, you know what, this kind of step, prepare URL params and navigate, shouldn't be part of the results, should be part of the container. I know, but the idea is still the same. The idea here is that we want to invoke the HTTP call based on the URL parameters. If we follow this approach, the advantages, and actually are the items that we had previously, the disadvantages, I just convert them to advantages. We can now refresh the page. We have deep linking functionality, and the back button works as expected. Nice. And what we're talking about here is that we would like to have the URL as a single source of truth. So this is what we would like to follow in terms of flow. And when I'm saying that the URL should be the single source of truth, I'm saying the following, that based on the URL, we should dictate the selected filters, and we should also dictate the pills that we would like to display there. And for this talk, I'm using pills and chips interchangeably, but it's I mean the same thing. All right. So this is the flow that we would like to follow. Now, we will do together something, the following part. I would like to see what is the code that we will follow, that we will code without having the atomic state controllers. So we will see the before, and then we will see the after part. Okay, so let's go now and jump directly how we can implement this kind of functionality that we have just described. First and foremost, we need to have a filters component. And into the filters component, let's say that we'll have a form group. This could be also signal forms, but this is another part of the story. We'll have the filter form, where we'll have the filter 1, filter 2, and filter 3. And if you remember, what we said is that the time that we are selecting any filter, we would like to emit an event. And for that reason, we can have the filter form, value changes, just to have a subscription there, just a listener, listen to the value changes, and map the form values and eventually emit the event. Nice. But wait a minute. What we also said is that when we reload the page, we have to populate the filters. We have actually to grab the URL parameters. We have to map those parameters to specific filter values, eventually prepare the form value so that we can then set this kind of form value into our form, which is nothing that fancy at this point, right? So the only thing that we're doing is we're just grabbing the values, preparing the form value, and we are set it back to our form. Nice, and things will work so far. So let's continue. And one of the things that perhaps I forgot to mention previously, is that we have this small button, clear all filters. So what are the requirements for this one? The requirements are the following, that we have to display, or we have to enable the button whenever we have any filter selected. If I have this kind of filter selected, this button should be enabled, or this one, or this one. So how can we achieve that now? But since we are in signals, things will be a bit more easier. Meaning, again, under the filters component, we can have no more like a computed property. And for the computed property, we can grab the form values. We can now ignore how we are preparing the form values. Okay, let's assume that we have a function there that is preparing the form values for us. We are grabbing the form values, and if we do not have anything there, we just return false for the hash active filters. All right. But then if eventually I have any form value, I will create a Boolean expression for filter 1, Boolean expression for filter 2, filter 3, and eventually I will return this one. All right. And this will make the button active or inactive, enabled or disabled. Okay. But at the same time, we have also this kind of thing, which are the pills. All right. So let's jump now in another component and talk about how eventually we can construct the pills. So currently we are under the pills component. Don't try to read the code. This is more like a pseudocode. You have already understand that this is not code that works. It's more like just to explain some parts. So into the pills component, what we're doing is that we can grab the query parameters. We can map those URL values to a model so that we can interact with the actual URL. And eventually, since we have signals, what we can do is to create a computed property for our chips, for our pills. And how can we eventually do that? Well, it's not that hard. What we have to do is to loop over the selected checkbox items. And we have to loop over because for the checkbox items, we expect to have more than one item selected. So we are just pushing a new item with a key and the label into the result. And then we're doing the same thing for the single select items, either this is a radio or select menu, and eventually we just return the result. So as you can see, for all of that steps, they are not that hard, but they are many and in different places. So let's now, and this is only to display the pills. I didn't explain the code that we have to write of what will happen when we are eventually removing a pill. So let's now create a list. What are the steps that we need to have for every filter? Let's assume now that we're going to introduce a new filter. So what are the steps? Well, we have to add a new form control to filter form, all right? We have to update the template with the filter component, including the form control name, just the binding there, okay? We have to update the emit filter state method to serialize the new filter. We also have to populate the form URL to populate the actual URL parameters. We have to update the clear filters to reset the new filter. We don't have to forget that. We have to update the has active filters computed to know that, oh, you know what, I have a new filter and I have to update this kind of functionality. I have to update the pills component to display the new filter chip. I know it's a bit big list. And I also have to update the pills component again to have the functionality on what should happen when we are removing the chip. Okay. So we know that these are the steps that we have to follow. And to me, it seems like that we have a single unit, which is a filter, and that filter has certain logic and functionality, and we scatter that around. So instead of keep that a bit more isolated, a bit more focused, we have pills component, different methods, filters component, different methods, perhaps into the results functionality, different methods, different functionality. So for every single filter, we are doing this again and again. And now let's see the after part. The after part with atomic state controllers. Currently, we have seen the before part and how conceptually this should work. And now let's see how we can do that with atomic state controllers. But first and foremost, what is a controller? Well, let's go to the MVC design pattern. If we go to the MVC design pattern, and we can see the following, that the model, answered the question on what the data is. Okay, how about view? The view is what the user sees. And then we have the controller, which is the brain that coordinates the model and the view. Wait a minute. If we focus a bit now into the controller part, is the brain that coordinates model and view. I think that this one is very close into the component state that we saw previously. This is what we have to do. We have to coordinate the model and the view and prepare something for my component. All right. So let's now again do like we said at the beginning, at the very, very, very beginning in the intro. Let's have a pen and paper exercise. And before even we start coding for the atomic state controllers, I would like to have just a pen and paper exercise and gather the filter requirements. Okay, so this is what we have. This is the page. And let's now focus into one specific filter. Let's focus just into this guy right here. All right, so what do we need to have? At first, to make that happen, to have the filter, we need definitely to have a list of options. List of options meaning that we need to have the options that we have to iterate over and display the checkbox items, semi-shade, shade, or sun. Okay. Then we need to have the selected values. Eventually, we need to know, do I have semi-shade selected, or shade, or sun? Someone needs to provide this information. And I also need to have a flag for the hash filter if I have eventually anything selected or not. And how about now if we add into this exercise, into this small paper, the pills as well. So we can know now that if I select anything from here, I need to have this kind of pills. All right, so this is all under our data. The data that we need to have for a specific filter. However, this is not the only thing. We don't need to have only data. We also need to have some methods. So let's keep that aside. And now let's focus into the methods part. And when I say methods, I mean that when eventually we select any filter, we need to apply the filter. We need to do something with that one, right? So we can have this method there. And also, what will happen when eventually we clear all filters? We reset the filters. Something should happen. We need to have this method as well. And how about the remove filter? We have, as you can see here, we have the small X icon. And when we click that, we have to remove the filter. And all right, so we have 3 different methods. So let's keep that aside. And it's time now to construct our controller. And the controller is just a fancy name. This is the drum roll, da-da-da-da, for a function. This is no more like a function that manages some state and behavior. But you know what? This is the amazing part here. Since we now have signals, we can have stateful functions. And we can create a function to behave something like a facade and a closure, something in between, stateful functions with the power of signals. So let's now see what a controller is all about. A controller is something like that. We can have just export function, atomic filter controller, name it however you like. And if you remember into the pen and paper exercise, we said that we need to have data and methods. And for the data, we need to have the options, the selected options, the pills, and the hash filters. And for the methods, we need to have the apply filter, remove filter, and reset filter. And like what I said previously, we can keep state internally into this function. And we can do that just by utilizing the signals. And here we can just keep the selected options to know that, oh, you know what? Whenever I'm grabbing this function, every time I know what kind of options I have there. And not only that, we can also derive the pills using a computed property. We can have the apply filter logic, and we can have also the remove filter logic, that we know that we can do something with this filter whenever we are removing that. And the idea of the atomic filter controllers is that we can inject them whenever we have the injection context. And for that reason, we can also have, we can inject router or any other service that you can have in mind. The idea of this kind of controllers is to increase the reusability. To increase the reusability, we have to make that a bit more reusable, I would dare to say. And to make them reusable, a function, how can we have a function more reusable? Of course, by providing some arguments. And here, the arguments could be, for example, the options. If you remember previously, what we said is that we need to have a specific set of items that we have to loop over. So we can provide this kind of options. And not only that, we can also have an apply filter hook. Whenever we are applying a filter, I want to invoke the apply filter hook so that I can do something with that. All right, but how can I use this now? Well, to use this, we can start constructing that. So let's do the following. I have here the filters component, where let's name that plant type equals atomic filter controller, where we can provide just a controller name, just a unique ID, no more than that. And then for my options, I can have a signal of indoor and outdoor, for example. And I can also provide the selected value. And here I have the selected value because this one, and not plural, I mean, because this one accepts only once, since this is a radio button. And I can grab the plant type from the URL params. The URL params here is out of this topic. Let's assume that we have somehow a way to grab the URL parameters in a nice and a clean way. And then I would like to have some methods. This is what we said previously, right? And as you can see here, my method is apply filter hook. What I would like to do is whenever we're applying this one, I would like to navigate using query params, plan type, utilizing the value that will be provided into my apply filter hook. And you know what? For that specific filter, I want also to track an event just for my analytics. And of course, we can provide more methods like reset filter hook or remove filter hook. And this is just the configuration. This is all we have to do just to create one specific filter. It's just a filter for this use case, but of course we can do for many other use cases. A set of configuration just to have everything tied together. And now, how about using that into the HTML? So how can I do that? Well, before, we had something like that. Into the radio filter, we had to provide the options, we had to provide the selected values, and we had also to have some outputs, the filter change, filter reset, and filter remove. But now, what we have is the app radio filter by providing a controller. The components should know that they have to work specifically with a specific controller. And the components know that if I want to interact, I will interact directly with my controller, which acts as a bridge. And if I want to add more components, I can do that because this is what the controller is all about here. We can reuse that. We have the same component, but different behavior. And here we have the plan type, we have another filter type, one more filter type, whatever. And each controller here has different options, highly configurable, different selected values, different side effects, and we can just have different things. And I know that this is a new mental model, and I know that currently we're talking about filters. Filters here, filter there, but what I'm saying is that we can use for any other use case that you might have in mind. So for example, let's see a bit more totally abstract thing. Let's assume that for our place, we would like to have just a remote controller, to have the same functionality just for handling the remote controllers of my from my house. My device ID could be living room TV, and I would like to provide some channels, HBO, Netflix, YouTube. Yeah, I will remove YouTube. Doesn't make sense to have HBO, Netflix. And then for the current channel, I decide to pick that one from a service that comes from somewhere. I don't care. And I have some methods as well. What will happen when I change channel? What is happening when I'm turning off my TV completely? All right, so this is a bit more abstract. So let's now go back again to our example. Currently, let's assume the following, that we have already prepared 3 different controllers. We have the light requirements controller, we have the plant properties controller, and we have the plant type controller. We have everything there nice and tidy, and we can start using them. And every controller has different configuration, and we can start using them. All right, but wait a minute. We have this button here, the clear all filters. And the functionality for this one is the following, just to refresh our memories. We have to enable that whenever we have any filter selected. So how can we have that now? The good news is that we are exposing signals, and we can definitely use a computed property for this one, just a computed property for the light requirements for plant properties and plant type. But how about if I have 50 filters? Do I have to do that 50 times? And the same thing is happening here. Again, for this one, what we have to do is to use a computed property just to accumulate the selected item, the selected filters from every selected item here. But again, what will happen if we have 50 of them? Do we have to do that manually? Well, I really like the idea of having the computed property, but I really don't like the idea of doing that manually. I prefer to do that more, let's say, automatically. So let's now see the following, that we have the controller 1, that controller 2, controller 3, controller X, controller whatever, and every one of them, they have data and methods. So what we can do is to introduce one more controller here, which is our wrapper controller that can accumulate the data from every individual controller. And the wrapper here is very useful because it speaks to all using the exact same interface. So currently we had only 3 controllers. Now we are introducing a fourth one, a fourth function. And how can we use, where are we going to use this kind of function? We will use that for our nice pills, and we will use that also for this kind of button. But wait a minute. We're saying that we have to create a new controller. And if you remember at the beginning, what we did, a pen and paper exercise. Let's do this pen and paper exercise here as well. For the wrapper controller, we need to have just the data for the hash filters flag, whenever we're going to have that enabled or disabled. And we need to have also the pills. All right, let's keep that aside. And let's do now the pen and paper exercise for the methods. And you know what? For now, we will keep that a bit lean. And the only one method that we're going to have is the reset filter. When we clear all filters, we're going to do something. All right, so let's keep that aside and let's jump directly to the code and start coding that. Again, no more like a function, atomic wrapper controller, and we return data and methods. What kind of data? Pills and hash filters. And what kind of methods? Just the reset filter. Nice. But here we need to have one more special method, and this is the register. We need to have the register method since we need to introduce to the atomic wrapper controller the individual controllers. Somehow, everyone, the wrapper controller needs to know from needs to know the other filter controllers as well. And we'll keep this information internally into a controllers array. And now let's go into the implementation part. What we said is that we need for the pills to have a computed property, right? And here it is. We do have the computed property, but this time we don't have to do that manually. We are relying solely on the wrapper controller to do that for us. We have just to reduce over the controllers, and then we can accumulate all the pills. And the same thing is happening with the reset filter. We are looping over the controllers, and we are just invoking the method that every individual controller has attached to. But now, how can I use information? How can I use that? Well, let's see that. Again, under the filters component, what we're doing is that we are creating an instance of the atomic wrapper controller. Here it is. We have the wrapper controller, and we have to introduce, if you remember previously, we have to introduce the wrapper controller into the atomic filter controller, and internally, it will just use the register method. And let's assume that we have everything configured properly into my filters component. But eventually, how can I use that to make use the power of the wrapper controller? Well, when we clear all filters, I don't have to do any manual stuff that we had previously into the before part. I don't have to clear any form. We no longer need to have a form here. The only thing that we have is the URL as a single source of truth. So when we are clearing the filters, the only thing that I have to do from my filters component is just wrapper controller methods remove filter. No more than that. I don't have to do something else. And I don't care how this will work, meaning from the wrapper controller. Every individual controller knows the functionality that needs to be implemented. And how about the pills? If you remember, this was the code that we used to have previously, where we had to read the query parameters, to do this kind of mapping, and then eventually to have a computed property to loop over the filters. And here, the thing that I don't like it that much is that, you know what, from the pills component, I need to know, and I need to find a clever way to display eventually the correct label. But I don't feel that this is a responsibility of that component. I would prefer every individual item to know about his responsibility. So instead of having this one, now we can just replace that with this thing, this wrapper controller data pills. and we'll have everything for my pills just to display that there. So for every filter, and this will be my last slide, what we're doing is that we inject the appropriate atomic filter controller because they are highly reusable. We just have to configure it, no more like that, and add the atomic filter component to the template wired to the new controller. And in summary, what we are achieving with this kind of pattern, it's highly maintainable. Whenever we have a bug, we don't have to go into the results page component and risking on breaking the results functionality, the search functionality. It's highly maintainable because they are isolated. Reusability, highly reusable because they are configurable. Single responsibility, by all means. Atomic coordination, we have the wrapper controller. We don't have to do something manually. We rely solely on the wrapper controller doing some dirty job for us. Reduce cognitive load. Well, this is so-so. Why? At first, this is a new mental model, and we need to understand how this works. We need to have our hands dirty. And as soon as we have that, then indeed we have reduced cognitive load. But at the beginning, we need to learn how this works. And also, this is a great way also for newcomers into our team. And the reason is that they know that, you know what, I have to deal with the same thing, the same functionality, isolated for every complex UI part. So that goes all from my side. Thank you very much for your time and your attention.
As always, great talk, Fanis. We've learned a lot of new things, and it's interesting that you're bringing up the topic of MVC, as it was like kind of old pattern, but I see very good use case for it right now in the modern Angular.
Yeah, indeed, and it seems that we can have this kind of thing just to grab the concepts. And if we grab the concepts, we know how we can utilize this kind of concepts. All patterns, but still they are used. And if we understand deeply how this kind of patterns work, we can make it better for our use cases.
Yes, definitely. And I like the reusability of this solution. It's like super cool. Okay, I see we have a few questions in the chat. So let's start with the one from the Natalia. Is atomic state with signals an evolution of Angular itself, or rather an attempt to adapt Angular to the fine-grained reactivity trend?
Good question. No, it's not an evolution. The atomic state if it's an evolution of signals of Angular itself. No, it's not an evolution of Angular itself. But what I would like to think of is the following, that I have been using Angular since Angular 2, Angular version 2. And back in the days, it was solely object-oriented. We had a class for everything, right? But now what we have is mainly a more functional approach. We have functions for guards, we have functions for resolvers, we have functions for almost everything. So this is not an evolution of Angular itself, but it's more or less like following this kind of trajectory of Angular.
Yes. Okay. As far as I can see, this was the last question. You can wait for like 20 seconds. See if somebody else also have a question.
And I will share the code. I know that whenever we have a new mental model, we need to have our hands dirty. So I will share the code into the YouTube channel just for people to can follow along. Whenever we have something new, you need to truly understand how this works. To, like what I said, to have your hands dirty and realize, oh, you know what? I like it, I hate it. And then perhaps, now that I use that, perhaps I have 50 more questions on how we can do that even better.
Yes, I agree. You can't learn something without trying. It's like the whole point of the learning. You have to first fail, then understand what you did wrong, and finally you can learn something.
Exactly. And it's also very good, this one, it's also very good for unit testing, since this is no more like a function. is very easy to unit test that. But this is not my topic. Eunice will sign on his next talk on this one.
Yes, we'll wrap our Q&A session. I don't see any more comments in the chat. So, Fanius, once again, thank you for joining us today. This was a super great talk, and I haven't seen this pattern before. So, nice job on this experiment.
Thank you very much.
Once again.
And thanks for having me. It was a great pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you. Okay, now it's time to introduce our third and last speaker. Honestly, we've been trying to get this guest on our stage for a whole year, and we finally made it happen. Our next speaker is the most recognizable, and in my opinion, arguably the only valid Angular software cook in the community. For those of you who don't know him, it's Jons, and he's active, very active on the X. He's also a teacher and a guy who knows more about the testing than anyone else. Jons also runs a popular YouTube channel and is incredibly active, as I mentioned. So welcome on the stage, Jons.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Perfect. Well, thank you for the welcome and for the presentation. It's really it's nice. So yeah, I hope you're all doing well. The talks were really exciting. I was just doing some research at the same time because it was very interesting from Krzysztof and Dennis. So yeah, really good lineup.
Yeah, it's super nice to see you.
Thank you.
I've prepared a few questions for you, as you could have expected. So, as we are now in this AI era, we are writing more and more agentic code. So, I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on the test-driven development, especially right now?
That's very interesting. So it's actually a topic I'm preparing some stuff on. So the thing is that the first angle that people fell in was like, oh, now I have an agent, it can write tests afterwards. So we keep the habit of implementing the feature and then adding tests just for compliance or for the next time I make a change. And actually it can be the other way around. And we all see and we all experimented or have seen some content about the fact that even Fannis mentioned that too, when agents are focused on a task, so we use less context window, we expose less code, etc., it behaves better. And if it has a really good feedback loop of whether it's going in the right direction or not, then it behaves even better and faster. So if you have your tests first, and you do some test-driven development and you write your tests, and if you have really good tests, if you have a good testing strategy, well, it's going to help your AI-assisted development workflow to be more efficient. And it's actually something I'm not going to talk about today, but it's another topic that I cover. I made a video on it, so you can watch it on my YouTube channel. I have also some talks around it, so maybe I'll come back for that the next time. And it's something I call charted coding, and it's a whole AI-assisted development workflow where you start with a design doc, then you generate your tests, you review your tests, and the tests will help your agent implement the feature. And it turns out to be less token consuming, and you have less review fatigue, because as you can see today, the major issue with the AI-assisted development workflow is the review. And so I'm not going to give the talk about this today, but so clearly tests will help a lot with the AI-assisted development workflows. So even if you help the agent write the test, or if it writes the test or whatever, it will help you.
Okay, and what is your opinion on writing tests with AI? Because as you may know, if people are writing the tests after the feature has been done and they simply ask a junior, write me a test for this, for example, pipe, it will speed out a lot of the code with checking for undefined, null values, empty strings, and all of these edge cases. And personally, to me, they feel like artificial code coverage, or sometimes it simply fails a basic bug which should have been cut in this unit test, which AI missed. So my question to you is basically, are you writing all of your tests by yourself, or you are also kind of sometimes leaning on the AI to help you find the edge cases and write the test cases?
Oh, that's a really good question. So what I do is that again with my workflow, I always start with some sort of design doc, and in that design doc, I have my test cases in mind. And the test cases are just plain English, like, oh, mount this component, fill it with few recipes, and then click add and make sure the add button are disabled. And this is just plain English that's I write with the agent. So sometimes if the thing is very complex, I take the control and I write the scenarios and I want to control that. Or sometimes it's easier and I'm ready for some review. So I let the agent write this and then I review that. And we work together on it or as a team with agents. And at the end, I ask multiple agents with different skills to review these scenarios that are still just in plain English. Okay. And from there, I generate the tests one by one, or I review them, or file by file, or group by group. But I really control everything by tests. So, and that's the main thing I review is really the tests. I'm very focused on that because why is that important? Because agents, even with the right skills and configuration and context, they tend to do what we call over-specifying. They tend to over-specify, which means that whenever you refactor something, it's going to break tests, and you don't want that. And so you want your test to be meaningful, and you want to really, for example, if I have what Fan has described, I would write tests that make sure the controller behavior is there, not exactly, oh, this property inside is undefined or not, because that could change in the future. So I will not mock many things, etc. So this way I will have tests that will be there forever, because whenever an agent changes some code in my app, I can review that relatively quickly, but I'm pretty confident if my tests are still passing. But if the agent changes my tests, I'm very stressed. I'm like, wow, what happened? Can I validate this test? What if it changes like hundreds of tests? Oh no, should I accept that or not? And that can introduce regressions. So yes, so I write my tests with the agent, but I first focus on the scenario. And I really loved what Fan said about like, whether you're using agents or not, you have to think first before writing code. So you have to shut down your screen and think of the design and then challenge that design with the agent and then go ahead. I hope this answers the question.
I see this also as a valid point. Basically, agentic coding is, in my opinion, like reviewing all of these changes, confirming if everything is all right. And vibe coding is just basically do it. I don't care how you do it. It may work, it may cause regression. And a lot of clients basically don't like regression. Why did something break if we didn't change it or anything? So yeah,
yes,
tests
exactly.
are very important.
Yes, and controlling the testing strategy is very important, and there are many properties like over-specification that I mentioned. Another property is speed. So if you have like agents that can write hundreds of tests in a few minutes, and they can write hundreds of end-to-end tests, that's amazing, but the 100 end-to-end tests will be flaky. They will take 2 hours to run, and they will become a real pain. So that's why you have to be in control of the strategy. Not necessarily writing each line of test, but being in control of that.
Yes, this is especially important in case of the end-to-end tests, which are super heavy in terms of performance.
Yes, exactly. And so yeah, and so to summarize it, tests are part of the harnesses that you have around your agent to go in the right direction.
Yes. Okay, Jans, I believe you can start and tell us about the Vitest and how it changed the future of the testing in the Angular.
Cool. So first, let me just make sure I can share my screen. And can you hear this sound? Is this working? Oh, damn it. I lost you. Yeah, it works. Okay, good. And let me just test one last thing. Share screen. And Good. Wait, there's just someone here. Let me just come back in 1 minute.
Hi, everyone. We've gathered today to mourn the end of Jasmine, Jest, and Testacular. Sorry, what's that? Oh, it's not Testacular anymore. It's Karma now. Oh, okay, didn't know that. Good. So, Karma, dear sweet Karma, you did your best to make tests symmetric to production. You just wanted to launch a browser and died waiting for it to connect back. Jasmine, oh Jasmine, such a free spirit, no dependencies, it was really crazy. But without Karma, life became meaningless. We all need a browser to feel alive. Then came Jest, the golden child, the savior. Jest, once Jasmine's companion. Yeah, they walked side by side until Jest took flight on its own wings. And Jest, you promised us zero config. Always ready for a joke, like pushing us off the cliff of the configuration or straight into snapshot testing. So then came the great migration, ECMAScript modules. We all jumped in the boat and left you stranded in the CommonJS desert. So yes, we are here to mourn, but also to celebrate VTest as the official Angular testing framework. So we are also here to thank the three of you, Jasmine, Karma, for the lesson you taught us. Never get too attached to a testing framework. Rest in peace, and may the new generation honor your legacy. Thank you.
Hey there. So I don't know what's happening here. But anyway, so my name is Jonas, and I'm from Lyon in France. I've seen the French flag in the comments, so super cool that there's some French folks here. And thank you. I've already noticed that there are people from all around the globe. I don't know what time it is there. I feel that some people are connected and it's evening and stuff. So it's really, really nice that you're skipping lunch and skipping dinner to be with us. So I'll try to make it valuable. Oh, there's someone from Lyon. That's cool. So you have to come to our Angular Lyon meetup. I didn't mention it here in my slides, but we have a local meetup that's we're running, but I stopped running it for a year because I had kids, and but it's gonna be back. So for all the people in Lyon and for all our other people, we're streaming. We're uploading the videos afterwards, so that's cool. Anyway, so I'm up, not clicking the right place. I'm a software cook, so just like you, I like to cook software, and I go to the online market, try to find the right spices, the right framework, the right tools, the right patterns, which are the recipes, and mix that together. Maybe too much of that, maybe a little bit of this, maybe too much AI, maybe not enough skills, maybe more, and figure out what works. And I'm also passionate about Angular and NX and other things, of course, and that made me become an Angular Google developer expert and NX champion. I don't like the words champion and expert, but I see this as more of a link between the amazing folks who are building these tools and the amazing folks who are using these tools, and try to connect all of you together. And all these things take some time. And for a living, I run my own business, which is Marmicode, which is my brand. So I train and coach teams. I also have a YouTube video, as David mentioned, so you can head there and watch. Not right now, later. You can head there and watch my my videos there, and that's it. Well, let's move to more serious stuff. So today I want to test this application where you can search for recipes, filter them, and add them to your meal planner, etc. So what's the internal design? Nothing special. We have a recipe search, which is a container component. We have a recipe filter, which is just the form that has some inputs and outputs, and the recipe preview, which displays each recipe. We fetch recipes through the network through a recipe repository service, and the state, as Thanos mentioned, where does it live? It lives in this meal planner, which is an Angular service, but it could have been a controller, an atomic state controller. Anyway, so let's test this. Okay, I just need to put my apron on. In case things get dirty or whatever. You never know. And okay, I'm ready. So, I need an IDE, please. And here we go. So here, I have my app, which is here. I have my code here, and I will write my test with vtest. But wait a second, I don't have vtest here. Oh man, it's not the right repo, but it's not a problem. I just have jest here. So you know what I'm going to do? We'll just use the analog plugin. So the Angular.js is a meta framework on top of Angular, but that's not what we were using. It happens that the team behind this, and Brandon Roberts, who've created this, has been doing a lot of research around Vite and vtest, etc. And he's providing a vtest Angular plugin that also allows us to set up vtest easily this way. I'll show you later the exact reason why I am not using the Angular CLI unit test runner for vtest, and I will quickly explain what's the difference with the vtest plugin, with the analog plugin. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter that much because you will write your tests in the same way, and that's what matters to me. I don't want to use the browser mode yet. We'll talk about it later. So this did the whole setup. And you see, I have the Vite configuration, the TS config was updated, etc. It just changed something in the project JSON that I don't need because I'm using NX here and it's adding this test executor. I don't need it because I can just run NX. It will find the Vite config and just run vtest. So let's see if our test is passing. I'll just run NX test. And oh no, the test is not passing. So what's happening here? What we have here is that, yes, some tests are passing, but some other tests are not passing because they're using Jest, and I'm using vtest. So I should migrate this stuff from Jest to vtest. This is annoying. I don't know what to do. God. What's happening?
Did you ask for me? Why don't you use a code mod? It takes a few minutes to migrate most of your tests.
Okay, that's a good idea. Why not? Why not do that? So yes, indeed, there is a code mode that allows me to migrate my test from Jest to VTest. Well, there are different approaches. The first one, if you have like Jest tests and you're migrating to VTest, is that you can migrate progressively. You don't have to go big bang. One example is that I can just rename this test to jest.ts instead of spec.ts. What was the other test that was breaking? The recipe filter test. Okay. And here, the recipe filter spec, I'm going to rename it to jest. And I will just change the jest config to only load tests that are named jest. And now, when I run nx test, it's just running my tests that work with both Jest and VTest. And that's one of the amazing things between Jest and VTest, that they share a lot of similar API. And so you mostly don't have to change anything. And if you're using Jasmine, well, you have the Angular CLI migration too. And if I run nx jest, it will run Jest in the folder, and the Jest tests are passing. So this works. Or, as it has been mentioned, I could just rename this and this to spec. So you remember, this was broken. Okay. But if I run this command, which is code mode, so, well, it's an old version of the code mode that has this Jest VTest migration, because obviously Angular is not the first framework that has to migrate from Jest to VTest. Other people have been there, and they've implemented this Jest to VTest migration. And hopefully, whenever I have some time to finish one of my projects, there will be an alternative to this that will make the migration smoother. Let's see what happens. So I'm just running this, proceed, and let's run the tests. And everything's passing. So what's happening here? It's replaced all the jest.something with v.something. Oh, you can't see the command completely? Oh, sorry for that. Here you go. You can take a screenshot if you want. So it's code mod jest vtest, and you will see it in my cookbook, and I'll give you the link at the end. So the migration worked, and now I can start writing my first test with vtest. Just gonna go to a clean branch where I don't have any changes. And so here, I want to test this recipe search component, okay? So as mentioned previously, it was David. I often write my tests in plain English first, like mount this component, then make sure there's this thing displayed, etc. And here I just want to make sure that, well, it's not exactly that there's only one recipe, there's more, but I want to mount the recipe search component and then make some assertions there and check that a recipe is displayed. So the recipe search component is doing some stuff with Rx resource, etc. And here it's looping through recipe preview, and each recipe has a heading where the recipe is displayed. So you know how cumbersome it is to query the DOM with the test bed, you know, like test bed, so you have to grab the fixture and, oh, sorry. So you do fixture, debug element, query all, blah, blah, blah. And sorry, I'm just gonna disable tab. Query all, blah, 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 and you have to query the thing with predicates, very annoying. But one thing that was common with Jasmine and Jest is that it, and I highly recommend it, is even though now we're not going to use it from now on, but previously we were using this testing library open source package that was initially designed for React by Ken C. Dodds. And then there's an an adapter for Angular. And here, the cool thing is that you can query the DOM by just saying get all by role, and I can find all the headings that are displayed, and or I can say, you know what, just find the first heading with level 2, which is an H2, and here I'm querying with area role with the role of the accessible in an accessible DOM. This is really nice, so that, for example, if you want to interact with a button and you query by role button, if it's a button element, it works, but if tomorrow you use a div and you give it area role button, it's just gonna work, and that's pretty nice. So here I will just grab an H2, or maybe I don't care about the level, and I want the one that's called burger. And let's see if this is visible. Sorry, expect. Now the problem here, this matcher is also added by the testing library, so that I don't have to check visibility myself in the DOM, because it's very complicated. How do you make sure that an element is visible? Which property do you check? So you have these matchers that are pretty convenient. And but we'll see in a few minutes that we will not need the testing library in the future. Now I will run my tests. One thing that I use here is that I use Wallaby.js, which is a Cursor, VS Code, WebStorm plugin, and it also works in the CLI, that runs your test in your IDE, but it provides a lot of tools around it. But let's run the test and see how it goes. Okay, so now, okay, I can see this test is not running, so I'm gonna enable the test. It was in to do, and my test is failing. And you know this with Angular testing, you've been there probably, I've been there. Who did this already? You can react in the comments. And you call fixture detect changes, it's not working, so you call it another time, it's not working, you call it another time. Or what's a little bit better is to call fixture when stable, and you wait for Angular stability, and that's what actually Krzysztof mentioned previously, where it's under whenever you're using dependent tasks under the hood, which Angular is using under the hood to tell Angular that, oh, the app is busy doing something or fetching data from the network. And here it's not enough, so let me try add another when stable. And wait a second, is this what's happening here? Oh, there are multiple. Sorry for this, because there are multiple burgers. Okay, so let's try again. So I do this, it's not passing. You can see the test is failing. I call fixture detect changes, not working. Call another detect changes, not working. Call another one, not working. And when I call when stable, it's not working. Try another one, and now it's passing. So what's happening here, I'm just highlighting an edge case that could really happen. I'm doing some weird stuff here where I'm using the after next render hook, and I'm actually doing something that makes Angular think that the app is stable, but actually I'm not done yet. So this can be really annoying, and you have to call it after each interaction, and that's very, very annoying. And one thing that made playwrights succeed in the end-to-end world, and what's also making vtests succeed, is what we call, when you interact with the DOM, is what we call the auto retry, or the fact that the testing framework is waiting for something to happen. Because in reality, I do not care about Angular stability. I just want vtest to keep trying this until it works, or until the test times out. And how do you do this? Well, for example, I can just say, wait for this to work. And vtest provides this by design. So you have, by default, so you have expect.poll, which is similar to what you have in Playwright, for those who are familiar with Playwright. And it will keep polling, it will keep trying this function until it works. For those who know testing library, they know that there is an asynchronous function here that keeps waiting for this to return something. But that's not what I want. I want this to exactly match, which is different. So I can do this. I can interact with the DOM, etc. But it's still not perfect. But let's keep this like this. The only thing is that you noticed previously when I was looking for burger or something, and I was trying to run my tests with either with the CLI or here with the. Oh, let me run it here in the CLI. I hope you can see the terminal properly. Well, that's not very readable, right? I mean, it's saying I cannot find the one burger because you're saying, do you have one burger? And I found multiple burgers, and it's just showing me the HTML, and I'm not an HTML parser, right? So this doesn't help me alone, and a lot. So, and it's a simple component. Now imagine something more complex. And what if I run this in UI mode? I know that VTest has this UI mode. Well, it opened the browser in another screen. So I can see my test here. That's good. Now I'm going to run it here. And the test is failing, but I'm just having what's in the terminal. So this doesn't help a lot. Well, I have a module graph, and I can see what's imported, how much time it took to import each thing. So that's pretty cool. I have the code. Nice. But this doesn't help me. So you have to understand that the VTest UI is just a UI reporter of your tests. It's not the running your test in the browser yet. What's running the test in the browser is what we call VTest browser mode. So how does that work? So it's something that actually was available in VTest since a while. I think since VTest 2, I think, and it was experimental, and it became stable with VTest 4, and that's actually where the Angular team decided to adopt VTest as the default framework. Actually, I think it helped them a lot to see that the browser mode was stable. So here, what I'm doing here, I've switched to another branch where I have some additional tests that you can have a look at, where I interact with my component. And in the vt config, or the VTest config, I'm using one amazing feature in VTest is that actually can have multiple projects. This, for example, is actually not available with the Angular CLI. In Angular CLI, you cannot have this kind of configurations right now. It can change in the future at any time, but right now it's not possible. Also, by having this configuration, my IDE works. Like, for example, NX detects that Vt I'm using VTest here, and it adds the test target. Also, I can use Wallaby.js that you've seen me use here, and I didn't show you all the features of Wallaby.js, but for example, one of them is that you can inspect the values of any variables. Like, for example, if I have a variable here, anywhere in your code, you can just highlight. Oh, sorry, I disabled the feature. And oops, sorry. And I can inspect the values of the variable here in my test or wherever in my code. And this is a feature from Wallaby. There are other features in the VTest VS Code plugin, etc. And all these plugins do not work with the Angular CLI approach because it's wrapping VTest. So they cannot understand the VTest config and do this. Or you can just do this and see live what's happening here. Or you can, with Wallaby, you can just watch the variable here and see what's inside, or watch it as a graph. See, okay, I have a name, what's in the steps, what's in the ingredients, etc. So anyway, I'm just saying that with this Vt plugin, I'm very flexible, and I can add other VTest, other Vt plugins, etc. And so what I'm doing here with this projects thing is that I have two configurations. One that says whenever you see a test that doesn't have browser in its file name, .spec.ts, it's an emulated test. And whatever is named browser.spec.ts, it's a browser test. And I have two projects here. One that I call emulated, that runs the emulated test in Node.js with an emulated environment, which is JS DOM. This is what we were using in Jest before. And when you're using a browser.spec.ts, this is going to use browser mode, which means that the test will be running in a browser. And vtest will be using Playwright as a tool or as a provider to open the browser and close it and control it. So, and you can choose as many browser instances that you want, etc. This means that basically, if I just rename this test to browser.spec.ts and I run my tests in watch mode so that the page stays open, well, here it is. I have my tests running and I can see, oh, this is showing the recipes. This is filtering the recipes. And actually I can even interact with it. And this is clicking on the add button and adding recipes to the meal planner. So that's pretty cool. So you're really, Playwright is really controlling, well, vtest is using Playwright to control this page. And all my tests are passing. Oh, perfect. So that's pretty good. And that's it. And I didn't change anything in my tests. It's just my tests that are running in the browser. That's it. What's this? Oh, sorry. It's my phone. Yeah. What? Nobody can add any recipes in production since this morning. Oh, but the tests aren't passing. It's working on my machine. Yes. Okay, I'll have a look at this. You have a branch for that, for the reproduction? Okay, I'll check it out. Okay, good. So what do we have here? Apparently there's a bug with the add button and they have a repro and it's here. And let's see what's wrong with this. Oh. The tests, let's run it. The test is passing. Add recipes to meal plan. Everything is passing. I don't know what's happening. Let me just try one thing. So my test is here, but instead of using the user event from testing library, you know, this is like the old way. vtest has, I've noticed in their documentation that they have something called vtest browser, and they have the exact same API. Okay, so they're having this user event, which is a library from the testing library group of packages, and it allows me, this is what I'm using to interact with the DOM, to click or to type some filters. When I type keywords here, I'm actually typing like this, user event, that type. And well, not sure if it's going to change anything, but let's see. Oh, the test is failing. How come?
Classic.
What? Who are you?
I am the other one. Listen to me. Just disable the tests.
Okay.
Do not listen to these whispers. In the land of vtest, tests have eyes. They see what users see. They touch what users touch. And what is broken cannot hide.
That's cryptical. But what's happening here? Let's have a look. Oh, I have a nice error, which looks a lot to what I know from Playwright. And it says, I am attempting, oh, look at this. I am attempting to click on a button, but whenever I try to click on the add button, it's actually the picture. And this is the burger picture that is grabbing the click. And then I'm trying again. And each time I try, it's actually the picture that's taking the click. How come? Well, actually, because the add button is here. And the picture that's grabbing the click this is in salade lyonnaise, which is a kind of salad. And this is the salad grabbing the click because the add button is actually cropped here. It should be in the card, and for some reason it's broken. And this happens because someone changed, wait a second. Okay. Let me just make sure the tests are okay. Good. Know why? Okay, good. So we can see that this test is failing and the click doesn't work. And we can see that this component is inside a test that's failing. And what's happening here is this CSS here, this is what broke the test. It's actually cropping my component. And the moment I change this, look, the test is passing. And I can see that, okay, oh, the add button, now it's displayed and the test is passing. And that's because vtest is actually really trying to click on that coordinates and it's failing because it's another element grabbing the click. So this can catch many bugs where you have like overlays, like a dialog popping and then you cannot click what's behind it and stuff like that. And by the way, you can see the experience with the IDE. So I have like a really quick feedback loop so I can make a change here and see instantly that, oh, I broke something. And this actually also helps AI agents. And by the way, Wallaby.js has a MCP tool that you can add to your agent so that the agent can instantly ask Wallaby if the test is passing or not. It doesn't have to run the test each time. And it can actually even ask about the value of each variable at any place in the page. Anyway, so that's pretty nice. And you can see that I also have the coverage here, which is pretty cool. You can see that I'm not getting into the picture anymore. Now I can see that I can render the picture, etc. So anyway, so now I caught this, but what's happening under the hood? So what's actually happening is that vtest is actually using Playwright as a test. When you use Playwright for your end-to-end test, Playwright is actually a test runner. And under the hood, you have the Playwright automation engine. It's the thing that allows you to open a browser and control it, etc. And the thing is, we do not need this. We do not need the Playwright test runner. I just want to use vtest. So what's happening is that vtest is our test runner. We're making assertions with vtest, etc. But vtest is using the browser provider, which is Playwright, and it's asking it to open a page and control it, etc. And then we use the Playwright to interact with the page through Chrome DevTools protocol, which allows us to click on elements, etc., and do things that wouldn't be possible otherwise, like checking what's inside an iframe and or pierce the shadow DOM and stuff like that. And what we were doing before using the vtest browser API, when I was just using testing library, even in browser mode, this is what I call partial browser mode. We have vtest that's using Playwright to open Chrome. Okay, that's good. But then the browser just loads the tests and runs them in the browser. So it creates the components. It's using testing library inside the browser to interact with the elements and click, etc. And then we make the assertions and we send the results to vtest. And this works, but we're just running all our tests inside the browser, all the interactions. But when you use full browser mode by importing user events from vtest/browser instead, well, actually, that thing is acting like an adapter that's actually calling vtest and serializing the element. It's not actually sending the element. You cannot send a DOM element through the network, but actually vtest is transforming the element to the path to the element, to a locator. And then when we call click, it's actually VTest that's asking Playwright to, or any other provider like WebDriver IO, it's asking it to control, to interact through the Chrome DevTools protocol and really interact with the element. And this way we have all the actionability checks that make sure the element is visible, it's clickable, it's not hidden, etc. And then we make the assertions that are still running in the browser, but that's not matter that much. And we get the reports at the end. So this is the full browser mode. And if you want better experience, you can use the page API that returns locators, just like what Playwright does. So for example here, instead of doing all these functions, you see sometimes it's cumbersome, you have to call find recipes, that is actually calling screen, find all, blah, blah, blah. Well, actually here, and also one problem is that what if the moment I return these recipes, there's still 3 recipes displayed and they're only filtered a little bit later, there's some latency, my test will fail and stuff like that. So I want to keep polling, you know, this is what I would actually want to do. I would like to keep polling and doing this, and then maybe doing the other assertions like this, but that's pretty cumbersome. And that's why the page API allows you to do queries like this. Recipe titles is page.getByRole, and you have to import it from vtest/browser. And I'm not saying get all or get one, I'm just saying get by role. And this is not asynchronous. This is returning, as you can see, a Playwright locator. It's just a recipe of how to find the element in the page. And now I can make this kind of assertions, and I can say, oh, now make sure that keep querying this, but this poll actually is not needed anymore. And I can just say, this is an element, recipe titles, and to have length 2. So here, I'm just providing the recipe of how to find the element or the path to the elements. And then I'm asking expect that element, which is a special assertion in VTest that allows me to make any assertions I want later. And the problem is, how do I make sure that the first recipe is burger? Well, I can't, because if I do something like this and I grab the first element, this is what returns the element, it's too late. I'm really fetching the element in the DOM. But I can create another locator. So nth will return actually another locator, as you can see here. And this is the recipe of how I find the first element that matches this. And this returns a burger. And my test is passing. And you can see how enjoyable the feedback loop is. And that's it. And that's all. And all these tests are running in the browser, and I can see the interactions here. You can take screenshots, you can compare them, etc. So it's pretty enjoyable. Now, this is VTest. This is VTest with browser mode. I will give you the repo at the end, of course, so you can see all these examples completely and the different patterns I'm using to query things and to factorize things in utility functions, etc. But you can see it's pretty straightforward and readable. I could write this in English, you know. Now, what if you're familiar with Playwright? You might notice that the assertions are not the same. So we will write end-to-end tests with Playwright. You will write smaller tests, what I call narrow tests, with the VTest. So it can be pretty inconvenient. What if there was component tests in Playwright, but officially, you know, because the Playwright component testing has been experimental forever. There's no support for Angular, etc. It's pretty frustrating. So what if you could just write your test with Playwright, and you call whatever you want in the browser to mount your components and interact with them? Well, and you get all the Playwright features like recording your test and asking all the Playwright CLI that allows the agents to interact with your test and debug them. Well, there's a tool. It's called Testronaut. We've been working on this with Reiner. So I've been doing lots of research on the Playwright component testing for Playwrights, and I tried to bring it to Playwright, and they gave up the whole component testing thing. So now we have Testronaut. Let me just show you this as a gist. So how does it work? So here, let me just quickly show you this, and then we're done. So I have a test. This is a Playwright test, right? This is where you usually navigate to any page and do whatever you want. But this time, I don't want to navigate to a page and interact with it. What I want to run some code in the page. So this is the utility that we're providing. And I want to call mount, and I want to mount the recipe search component. And here, I don't know what to do afterwards. So I will enable the tests, and I will ask Playwright to, I'm sorry for this, it's really small. How do you, okay. And I can say, open the browser and record at cursor. I'm going to put my cursor here, and I'm going to record at cursor. So this is just the plain Playwright plugin from, okay. So this is, wait a second. Oh, sorry for this. Sorry for that. Okay, good. So this is nothing fancy. This is just, okay, good. The Playwright plugin in VS Code or cursor. Okay, good. And now I can see my test is here. I'm just going to put my cursor here, and I will, oh, sorry. I will ask Playwright to record at cursor. And now I can record whatever I want. I can say, okay, you know what? I'm going to type BUR, oh, lowercase. And then I'm going to click on add. And then I want to make an assertion that this button has add or is disabled or whatever. And I can stop recording. And here you can see I have my test that is recorded pretty much okay. This is okay. It should have been better if this was a different locator. And look at this. What's amazing is that I have the whole Playwright experience. So whenever you highlight some selector here, you can see what's happening in the browser. So for example, if I say, I don't know, like, where is the add button? And I click the selector, it shows me all the selectors. If I say grab just the first one, it shows me, oh, this is the first one, and that's it. And then I can click on it. And at the end, I want to check what's in the store, actually. So what I will do is that I will run in the page test bed. That's inject my store, the meal planner, that recipes, which is a signal. In here, I can make sure that await, oh, sorry, expect recipes to contain an object that has a name burger. And let's run the tests. And, oh, sorry, something didn't work. Oh yeah, my timeout is very aggressive. Doesn't, oh, sorry for that. It's timing out. Let me just quickly change this because my computer is actually overheating for some reason. And then it's there, but oh, the name, oh, it's expecting value to be name. Oh, you know what? I'm just going to call to match object. It should be an array containing one object that has this name. And it's passing. And I could see it here. It just works, and I get the same Playwright experience. So what's cool is that you have the same experience as Playwright and everything, and you can take screenshots and do some visual snapshot, visual regression testing, etc. So it's pretty fresh, so give it a try. And we're supporting Angular first, and then we'll support more frameworks later, because it's pretty much framework agnostic. So that's all. I just have a few key takeaways to summarize this. So think of progressive migration. Don't think Big Bang, even though you have agents today that could do magic. But you can experiment with VTest a little bit, try browser mode progressively for your new test, and then migrate the rest for progressively. Think of full browser mode, so you have to use the page API ideally, or at least the user event from VTest browser as a bridge if you're coming from testing library. Keep your tests tooling agnostic. That's the lesson to learn. Try to write your tests in a way that is not framework specific. Like, for example, I've made a video on this. For example, use fakes instead of mocks and spies, which is a common problem in testing that makes tests painful and coupled to the testing framework. Prefer the analog plugin for the reasons I've mentioned in opposition to the Angular CLI. And notice that VTest browser mode is not Playwright. It's using Playwright under the hood, but it's not really Playwright. So if you want to learn more about testing, because this is just part of it, you can first have a look at my cookbook. I'll share the link with you. I've written some pieces recently about how to control time. There have been some amazing new features in VTest, thanks to the Angular team, on how to fast forward the time, for example. And there's my video course that you can actually win today. And I'm also running a workshop in June, and the early bird pricing will finish next week. So it's 3 days where I share all I can about testing without overwhelming you with lots of practical exercises, with an AI tutor that helps in addition to me. So it's that just gives you hints so that just don't copy paste stuff. It really helps and get all the human interaction, of course. And if you pick this QR code, or if I share the link with you on the chat, you can. Oh, I was not able to share my link. Oh, wait a second. Well, anyway, I'll figure that out later. So just scan the QR code, and you'll find the code, the slides, the cookbook, and the discount. That's not a good one. Wait a second. Okay, that's your good discount. So you'll find some stuff, the workshop on Angular testing, and also a brand new workshop on AI assisted development workflow with testing that I call charted coding. So that's it. Thank you very much, and I hope that there's still some people here, because I might have been over time. And if you have any questions, here, still have some time.
Yes. Wow, Jans, that was amazing. Thank you for this presentation. You did a wonderful job at preparing like this emotional introduction. I really like this one. It was incredible.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And
Thank you.
also, as far as I can see, multiple people love it. As you can see right now. Yeah, the reactions were super amazing.
Nice. Cool. It was worth the effort.
Okay. Yeah, it was definitely worth the effort. It's like the first time when I seen something like this in the Angular top.
Thanks. Even though you cannot breathe anymore with the smoke.
You cooked something really good.
Thanks.
Okay. I think we can move to the questions. I see a question from the Natalia.
Oh.
Do you know any tricks to reduce boilerplate in the tests? What helpful libraries do you use, and what can you recommend for the Angular?
Really, really good point, Natalia. So it's very crucial because it's some people are like, yeah, I don't care about boilerplates because it's just agents writing there. But using the boilerplates also helps reading the test. So first thing, if you're using the VTest browser mode page API, it makes the queries way more simple to interact with. And also by using expect.element and expect.poll, where you have like this polling and retry system, you do not have to worry about adding, oh, I'm going to call detect changes, I'm going to call wins table, and all these internals. Whenever you have to use internals from a framework when you're writing tests, there's something wrong. So for example, I just use testbed to create the component, or the router harness to mount few routes and see how navigation works for some guard or something. But then I'm just interacting with VTest browsers, so it makes things simple. Then you can check out the source code, and you will see that in each test, I have a setup function that returns some utility functions that I personally call gloves. And it's a general idea where it's the gloves are things that you write so that your hands don't get dirty with implementation details. So for example, you can say, give me what's in the meal planner. It will return the recipes from the meal planner. And these utility functions, initially you have them at the bottom of your test, just for each test file. So it factorizes things a little bit, but they have to be meaningful, so they make things easier. So that's one thing. Then you can factorize them later into some glove factories, and you can say, give me the glove for this filter component, just like what Angular CDK does for Angular CDK harnesses. It's the harnesses for Angular material. I don't think their API is the best experience. I don't think it's the way to go if you want to implement your own things. But if you just write some utility functions that returns the page locators and stuff, that will help a lot. And one other thing that you can see in my fakes video, or in my cookbook, or in the example here in the repo, or in my course, you have the idea of fakes and object mothers. So whenever I create recipes, for example, here, I do not create the objects myself. I have an object mother, which is a pattern that helps me write meaningful tests. So I can say, give me a recipe with vegan ingredients. And therefore, when I write a test, it's pretty simple. You can say, oh, I've created a recipe without vegan ingredients, one with vegan ingredients. Then I click the check mark for vegan, and I can see that it's filtered out or whatever. But I don't know exactly which property was set in the recipe. So the test is really readable, etc. So that's one thing. It also helps agents, actually. And I'm using fakes instead of mocks and spies, because that's probably one of the boilerplates Natalia might be thinking of. One of the common boilerplates is, you mount a component and then you start mocking everything around it and all the services, and use value, return observable of null, return this, return that. And that's a big problem because it's over-specifying. You're not making sure that things are really working together. So when you use fakes, it's a fake implementation of any repository, any service, or any class, or any function that is reusable in all your tests. You're not creating one for each test. It's something that you maintain with the real service. So whenever you touch the real service, it's going to break the fake interface, so you can change it, and all the tests will use that thing, and you don't have to worry about which method was called, etc. So that helps a lot. It's a tiny little effort initially, really tiny, but it's worth it after one day. It's just like a really good pattern to keep in Angular and beyond. So to summarize, set up functions at the bottom of your test, factorize if you really need to into some what I call gloves, and use fakes and object mothers.
Yeah, I think that answers Natalia's questions pretty well.
Hopefully.
Yes, and I also have my personal question. I've seen that you could do multiple things with the VTest directly from the IDE, which I was not able to see in case of Jest, at least whenever I researched Jest a few months ago. Is this also something new? For example, like this sidebar where you can run the tests?
No. So the thing that I showed is actually a plugin called Wallaby.js that actually works for Jest and VTest. But VTest also has a VS Code plugin that provides a really nice experience. It's not as complete as Wallaby, which is paying. So the free alternative is the VTest plugin, which works really well. So it shows the error directly in your test. You can have the coverage directly in your IDE. So it's really nice. So yeah. So the thing that I shown was Wallaby.js, but if you're not using Wallaby.js, which is free for open source projects, by the way, then you have to use the VTest VS Code plugin, which works really well too.
Okay, thanks. I haven't seen that extension before, and it looks super cool, to be honest.
Yeah, it's amazing. The things they're doing is amazing. And I didn't show half of it because, and I have to make some videos on it because I find it really amazing. And the people who are making this, they're just doing this. They're not promoting it at all, and it's pretty cool. But one of the things that it's doing is, who already tried to debug something or to debug a test, and you put breakpoints, and then you do next. Oh, and then you click next to an extra time, and now you have to start again. Well, it doesn't happen with Wallaby because actually Wallaby records the whole test running, and you can step into and you can step back and you can step back in time, and you can check whatever variable in the time whenever you want. And that's amazing because that's exactly what you need when you debug, because you go into a function like, wait a second, what were the parents from the parent function? Oh, the variables there. Oh, okay, it helps a lot. Now imagine the agents have access to that. And that's, for me, it's one of the first plugins that the MCP tools that amazed me, because it goes in the right direction. Because with agents, we think a lot of static context. Here's the knowledge base, here are the skills, here's the thing. But what if you could use runtime values in the context? And obviously you don't want to use production data most of the time. So tests are amazing for that, because you have tests that you can feed to your agent, and an agent can learn a lot of stuff on your app and debug way faster. It's something also that I have to write some content about it, because depending on how you design your tests and how, if, for example, the agent makes a change and it breaks 100 tests, this will not be efficient. But if you change something and it only breaks a test, one test, the agents will be super efficient into fixing. And that's amazing, because I'm just applying what worked for my little brain, and I'm trying to apply the same thing to agents, and it works. Because it's just a matter of context. My brain doesn't allow a lot of context, so I have to find patterns that help me focus. And by having this kind of tool, it helps a lot.
Yes, definitely. Like, getting this work with the agentic is definitely a game breaker, to be honest. Especially that you can provide that context that AI always needs to write something that is useful and beneficial without errors on the way.
Exactly, and like keeping your test as the guardrail. So yeah, and that's why it's one of the things where I do not agree 100% with approaches such as spec kit, which says, because they say a test is the specs are the executable specification is the new source of truth. So you just have markdown, and you have all your specs in a markdown, it will always work. I do not believe in that, because it's not deterministic. What I believe in is that you can use some markdown and design docs and discussions with agents to write your tests, but these tests will be the guardrails, and these things are the specification. If you have, if you remove the whole production code and you keep your tests, and then you ask an agent to write everything because from the test, this I can believe in. This is something that works, but I cannot believe for now, because I've made experiments and it doesn't work all the time. One specification in Markdown, try it with any kind of agent or any kind of model, and it's just gonna work. It's not. It's gonna be some randomness there. So.
Okay. I think we'll wrap up for today. I don't see any more questions in the chat. And Jans, once again, thank you for your super great presentation.
Thank
I
you.
hope to see you next time soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me. Thanks to everyone for joining and all the feedback here. It's really awesome. It's really encouraging to have people online chatting. It's really nice. It's not always like this online, so it's pretty cool. And sorry again for that we've been trying to do this for a while. It's really hard to find some holes in the planning and everything. So anyway, and if anyone needs anything, just reach out from whatever channel or you want, and we can help you out. Thank you very much.
Sure. Okay, see ya. Okay, this was the last presentation for today. Before we go, we have a few final reminders. First one of them is that if you missed any part of today's meetup, for example, Jan's introduction, you will be able to watch it on our YouTube channel. Keep an eye on your inbox for the direct links. Next, early bird pricing for the workshop is still available. Head over to the House of Angular website and use the code SPRING26 for the 10% discount on the Modern Angular with the AI workshop that is happening on June 12th. And lastly, keep an eye on your social media so you don't miss out the reveal of our next final speaker. Remember that our final meetup is happening on the June 9th, 3 PM CST. Until the next time, keep exploring new ideas, stay up to date with the Angular news, and we'll see you soon. Bye.